In the quiet corners of a Michigan home, a boy once dreamed of a world where information flowed as freely as water. He saw the world not as it was, but as it could be, connected, limitless, and bursting with possibility. He was not born into power, nor did he inherit a throne. He was born into curiosity, into questions, into the relentless pursuit of answers. His mind was a restless engine, always searching, always building, always reaching for something more. He would grow up to change the way we live, the way we think, the way we search for meaning in a world overflowing with data. He would build a company that would become a verb, a force, a revolution. But before the world knew his name, before Google became the gateway to the internet, Larry Page was just a boy with a vision. A vision that would challenge the impossible. A vision that would demand everything. A vision that would cost him friends, sleep, and sometimes even his sanity. But he would not stop. He could not stop. Because for Larry Page, the future was not something to wait for. It was something to build. And in building it, he would ignite a revolution that would touch every life on Earth. This is the story of Larry Page. This is the story of the Google revolution. And it all began with a single burning question. What if you could organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful? The answer would change everything. But the journey would test him in ways he could never imagine, and the world would never be the same. Larry Page was born on March 26, 1973, in East Lansing, Michigan. His father, Carl Page, was a pioneer in computer science, a man who saw the future in lines of code and silicon chips. His mother, Gloria, was a computer programming instructor, a woman who believed in the power of education and the magic of machines. In the Page household, technology was not just a tool, it was a way of life. The hum of computers was the soundtrack of Larry's childhood. Books on artificial intelligence and computer theory lined the shelves. Dinner conversations were filled with talk of algorithms, logic, and the promise of a digital tomorrow. But for Larry, it was more than just talk. It was inspiration. It was possibility. He was a quiet child, but his mind was loud, always asking, always wondering, always searching for the next big idea. He built his first computer printer out of Lego bricks at the age of 6. He devoured books on Nikola Tesla, Alan Turing, and other visionaries who dared to dream beyond the limits of their time. He saw the world as a puzzle, and he wanted to solve it. But even in those early years, Larry felt different. He was not interested in fitting in. He was interested in standing out. He was not afraid to be alone with his thoughts, to spend hours tinkering, building, and imagining. He was not afraid to be misunderstood, because he knew that the greatest ideas often begin in isolation. He knew that the future belongs to those who dare to think differently. At school, Larry was a quiet observer. He watched the world with a scientist's eye, always analyzing, always questioning. He was fascinated by how things worked and why they sometimes didn't. He was not the most popular kid, nor the most athletic, but he was relentless. He was driven by a hunger to learn, to create, to push the boundaries of what was possible. He joined the school band, playing the saxophone with the same intensity he brought to his studies. He loved music, not just for its sound, but for its structure, for the way notes and rhythms could be organized into something beautiful. He saw patterns everywhere, in music, in math, in the chaos of everyday life. And he believed that if you could find the right pattern, you could solve any problem. Larry's parents encouraged his curiosity. They filled his world with books, computers, and endless opportunities to explore. They taught him that failure was not something to fear, but something to learn from. They taught him that the only limits that mattered were the ones you placed on yourself. And they taught him that the future was not a gift, it was a challenge to be met with courage, creativity, and relentless determination. But even in this nurturing environment, Larry felt the weight of expectation. He knew that his parents had sacrificed for their dreams. He knew that they believed in him, perhaps more than he believed in himself. And he knew that the world was changing, fast. The digital revolution was just beginning, and Larry wanted to be at the center of it. He wanted to build something that mattered, something that would last, something that would change the world. As he grew older, Larry's ambitions grew with him. He devoured books on science, technology, and entrepreneurship. He dreamed of building machines that could think, learn, and solve problems. He dreamed of creating something that would outlast him. He dreamed of leaving a mark on the world. But dreams are not enough. Dreams must be forged in the fires of struggle, doubt, and failure. And for Larry Page, the journey was just beginning. But what happened next would test every belief he held about himself, and about the world he hoped to change. Larry's teenage years were a crucible of ambition and anxiety. He attended East Lansing High School, where he excelled academically but struggled to find his place socially. He was different, and he knew it. He was not interested in small talk or fitting in. He was interested in ideas, big, bold, world-changing ideas. He spent hours in the school library, reading about computers, physics, and the pioneers who had shaped the modern world. He was fascinated by the stories of inventors and entrepreneurs who had dared to defy convention. He saw himself in their struggles, their failures, their relentless pursuit of something greater. But even as he dreamed of the future, Larry was haunted by doubt. He wondered if he was good enough, smart enough, brave enough to make a difference. He wondered if his ideas were too big, too bold, too impossible. He wondered if he would ever find his place in a world that seemed to value conformity over creativity. At home, Larry found solace in his family's support. His parents encouraged him to pursue his passions, no matter how unconventional. They believed in his potential even when he doubted himself. They taught him that greatness is not a gift, it is a choice. A choice to keep going even when the world tells you to stop. A choice to believe in yourself even when no one else does. Larry took that lesson to heart. He threw himself into his studies, determined to prove that he could make a difference. He joined the school's science club, where he found a community of like-minded dreamers and builders. He entered science fairs, building robots and computer programs that amazed his teachers and classmates. He won awards, but more importantly, he won confidence. He began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could change the world. But the path to greatness is never straight. It is filled with twists, turns, and unexpected obstacles. And for Larry Page, the journey was about to take a dramatic turn. In 1991, Larry graduated from high school and enrolled at the University of Michigan. It was a new world, filled with new challenges and new opportunities. He joined the university's solar car team, helping to design and build a vehicle powered entirely by the sun. He took classes in computer science, engineering, and business, always searching for the next big idea. He was fascinated by the power of technology to solve real-world problems. He dreamed of building machines that could change the way people lived, worked, and connected. But even as he excelled academically, Larry struggled with self-doubt. He wondered if he was on the right path. He wondered if his dreams were too big, too bold, too impossible. He wondered if he would ever find the courage to take the leap. But Larry Page was not one to give up. He was driven by a relentless curiosity, a hunger to learn, to build, to create. He was not afraid to fail because he knew that failure was the price of progress. He was not afraid to be different because he knew that the world needs dreamers, builders, and rebels. He was not afraid to take risks because he knew that the greatest rewards come to those who dare to defy the odds. And so Larry Page kept going. He kept dreaming. He kept building. He kept searching for the next big idea. But just as he was beginning to find his footing, a single moment would change the course of his life forever. It was the summer of 1995. Larry Page was 22 years old, and he had just arrived at Stanford University to pursue a PhD in computer science. He was excited, nervous, and more than a little overwhelmed. Stanford was a world of brilliance, ambition, and competition. It was a place where the best and brightest came to chase their dreams and to fight for their place in the future. Larry felt like an outsider. He was surrounded by geniuses, visionaries, and future titans of industry. He wondered if he belonged. He wondered if he was good enough. He wondered if he would ever find his place in this world of relentless ambition. But Larry was not one to back down from a challenge. He threw himself into his studies, determined to prove that he could make a difference. He spent long nights in the computer lab, working on projects that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. He read everything he could get his hands on, always searching for the next big idea. But the pressure was intense. The competition was fierce. The stakes were higher than ever before. Larry struggled to keep up, to stand out, to make his mark. He faced rejection, criticism, and doubt at every turn. He wondered if he was wasting his time, if he was chasing a dream that would never come true. But Larry Page was not one to give up. He was driven by a relentless curiosity, a hunger to learn, to build, to create. He was not afraid to fail because he knew that failure was the price of progress. He was not afraid to be different because he knew that the world needs dreamers, builders, and rebels. He was not afraid to take risks because he knew that the greatest rewards come to those who dare to defy the odds. And so Larry Page kept going. He kept dreaming. He kept building. He kept searching for the next big idea. It was at Stanford that Larry met Sergey Brin, a fellow PhD student with a mind as restless and ambitious as his own. They were an unlikely pair, Larry, the quiet, methodical thinker, Sergey, the outgoing, irreverent risk-taker. But together, they formed a partnership that would change the world. They began working on a research project that would become the foundation of Google. They called it BackRub, a search engine that ranked web pages based on the number and quality of links pointing to them. It was a radical idea, one that challenged the conventional wisdom of the time. Most search engines relied on keywords and metadata to rank results. Larry and Sergey believed that the structure of the web itself held the key to better search. They worked day and night, fueled by caffeine, curiosity, and the belief that they were onto something big. They faced countless obstacles, technical challenges, financial constraints, and skepticism from their peers and professors. They worked out of their dorm rooms using borrowed computers and makeshift servers. They begged, borrowed, and hacked their way to progress. But progress was slow. The web was growing at an exponential rate, and their search engine struggled to keep up. They faced constant setbacks, bugs, crashes, and data losses. They wondered if they were in over their heads, if they were chasing a dream that would never come true. But Larry Page was not one to give up. He was driven by a relentless curiosity, a hunger to learn, to build, to create. He was not afraid to fail, because he knew that failure was the price of progress. He was not afraid to be different, because he knew that the world needs dreamers, builders, and rebels. He was not afraid to take risks, because he knew that the greatest rewards come to those who dare to defy the odds. And so Larry Page kept going. He kept dreaming. He kept building. He kept searching for the next big idea. But just as they were beginning to make progress, a single setback would threaten to destroy everything they had built. The year was 1997. Larry Page and Sergey Brin had poured their hearts, minds, and every waking hour into their search engine. But the world wasn't ready. Investors didn't see the value. Professors doubted the commercial potential. Friends and family questioned their sanity. The web was exploding, but the money was flowing elsewhere. .coms were rising and falling overnight. Search engines were a dime a dozen, and none were making real money. BackRub, their project, was just another experiment in a sea of digital noise. Larry and Sergey tried to sell their technology. They approached Excite, Yahoo, and Alta Vista. They offered to sell their search engine for $1 million. They were turned down, again and again. The rejection stung. Each no felt like a door slamming shut on their dreams. They were told their idea was too academic, too technical, too niche. They were told that search was a solved problem, that no one would ever pay for better results. They were told to give up. But Larry Page refused to listen. He believed in the power of their algorithm. He believed that the world needed a better way to find information. He believed that if they could just hold on a little longer, something would break through. But holding on was harder than he ever imagined. Money was running out. Their servers were crashing under the weight of growing traffic. They were living on ramen noodles and borrowed time. Their dorm rooms were overflowing with wires, hard drives, and empty coffee cups. They were exhausted, frustrated, and dangerously close to burning out. Larry's health began to suffer. He was sleeping less and less, his mind racing with worry and doubt. He snapped at Sergey, at friends, at anyone who questioned his vision. He felt the weight of failure pressing down on him, suffocating his hope. He wondered if he was leading them off a cliff. He wondered if he was wasting his life on a dream that would never come true. But even as the world doubted, Larry Page held on to a stubborn, unshakable belief that the world needed what they were building, that the world would one day see what he saw, that the world would one day understand. But the setbacks kept coming. Their servers crashed so often that they had to build a system to automatically reboot them. They ran out of money for new equipment, so they scavenged parts from old computers. They maxed out credit cards, borrowed from friends, and begged for donations. They worked through holidays, weekends, and every moment in between. They sacrificed everything, time, money, relationships, for a dream that seemed to be slipping away. Larry's relationship with Sergey was tested. They argued over strategy, over priorities, over the very future of their company. They were two brilliant minds, but their visions sometimes clashed. Larry wanted to focus on the technology, to make the best search engine in the world. Sergey wanted to explore new ideas, to push the boundaries even further. The tension threatened to tear them apart. But through it all, Larry Page refused to quit. He refused to let go of his vision. He refused to let failure define him. He remembered the lessons of his childhood. He remembered the stories of inventors and entrepreneurs who had faced rejection, ridicule, and defeat. He remembered that greatness is not measured by how many times you fall, but by how many times you get back up. And so Larry Page got back up, again and again. He kept building, he kept dreaming, he kept believing. But the world was changing fast. The dot-com bubble was inflating, and the pressure to succeed was greater than ever. Competitors were raising millions, hiring armies of engineers, and launching flashy ad campaigns. Larry and Sergey were still working out of a garage, still scraping by, still fighting for every inch of progress. They knew they needed help. They knew they needed someone who believed in their vision as much as they did. Someone who could help them turn their dream into a reality. That someone was an angel investor named Andy Bechtolsheim. In 1998, Andy wrote them a check for $100,000. It was a lifeline. It was validation. It was the spark that would ignite the Google revolution. But even with new funding, the challenges didn't stop. They had to build a real company, hire employees, and scale their technology. They had to compete with giants, outsmart rivals, and survive in a world that was changing by the minute. Larry Page was tested in ways he had never imagined. He faced sleepless nights, impossible deadlines, and the constant threat of failure. He faced criticism, skepticism, and the crushing weight of expectation. But he never gave up. He never stopped believing. He never stopped fighting for his dream. But just as Google was beginning to find its footing, a series of devastating setbacks would push Larry Page to the very edge. The year was 1999. Google was growing, but so were the challenges. The company was running out of space, out of money, and out of time. Their servers were buckling under the strain of millions of searches. Their tiny team was stretched to the breaking point. Larry and Sergey were working around the clock, but it never seemed to be enough. They faced fierce competition from established players like Yahoo, Alta Vista, and Lycos. These companies had deep pockets, massive user bases, and powerful allies. Google was still the underdog, still fighting for every scrap of attention. Larry struggled to keep up. He was the CEO, the chief engineer, and the visionary all at once. He was making decisions that would shape the future of the company and the future of the internet. The pressure was immense. Every mistake felt like a potential disaster. Every setback felt like a personal failure. He made mistakes. He hired the wrong people. He trusted the wrong partners. He missed opportunities. He lost deals. He watched as competitors copied their ideas, stole their talent, and tried to crush them at every turn. Larry felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He felt responsible for every employee, every user, every line of code. He felt the fear of failure gnawing at his soul, but he refused to give in. He refused to let fear dictate his future. He refused to let setbacks define his story. He doubled down on his vision. He pushed his team harder. He demanded excellence. He demanded innovation. He demanded the impossible. And slowly, painfully, Google began to grow. Users flocked to their search engine, drawn by its speed, accuracy, and simplicity. Word spread, traffic soared, investors took notice. But with growth came new challenges. The company was burning through cash at an alarming rate. They needed more funding, more talent, more infrastructure. They needed to scale faster than ever before. Larry faced a new kind of pressure, the pressure to lead, to inspire, to build a company that could survive and thrive in a world of giants. He struggled to let go, to delegate, to trust others with his vision. He struggled to balance innovation with execution, creativity with discipline. He struggled to find his voice as a leader, but he kept going, he kept learning, he kept growing, because he knew that the future belonged to those who refused to give up. But just as Google was poised for greatness, Larry Page would face his darkest hour, a moment that would test his spirit, his vision, and his very will to continue. The year was 2000. Google was on the brink of something extraordinary, but behind the scenes, Larry Page was falling apart. The pressure was relentless. The stakes were higher than ever. Every decision felt like a matter of life and death. Every mistake felt like a betrayal of his dream. Larry was exhausted. He was running on fumes, surviving on caffeine and adrenaline. He was working 18-hour days, 7 days a week. He was missing meals, missing sleep, missing life. His relationships were suffering. He was distant, irritable, and consumed by work. He pushed people away, afraid to show weakness, afraid to ask for help. He felt alone, isolated, and overwhelmed. He questioned everything. He questioned his vision, his leadership, his ability to succeed. He wondered if he was in over his head. He wondered if he was leading his team to disaster. The board of directors began to lose confidence. Investors demanded results. Employees whispered about his leadership. There were calls for change, for new management, for a new direction. Larry felt the walls closing in. He felt the weight of failure pressing down on him, suffocating his hope. He wondered if it was time to step aside, to let someone else take the reins. He faced a choice: fight for his dream or walk away. The darkest moment came when the board insisted on bringing in an experienced CEO. They wanted someone who could lead the company through its next phase of growth. Someone with experience, with credibility, with a track record of success. Larry felt betrayed. He felt like he was being pushed aside, like his dream was being taken from him. He felt like a failure. He considered quitting. He considered walking away from everything he had built. He considered giving up on his vision. But in that moment of darkness, Larry Page found a spark of hope. He remembered why he started. He remembered the dream that had driven him from the very beginning. He remembered the belief that had carried him through every setback, every failure, every moment of doubt. He realized that leadership is not about control, it's about trust. It's about empowering others to share your vision, to build something greater than yourself. He made a decision: he would stay, he would fight, he would learn, he would grow. He would become the leader that Google needed. But what happened next would change the course of Larry Page's life and the future of Google forever. Larry Page stood at a crossroads. He could feel the weight of every sleepless night, every argument, every moment of doubt pressing down on his shoulders. He had built something extraordinary, but now he was being asked to let go, at least in part. The board's decision to bring in Eric Schmidt as CEO was a blow to his pride, a challenge to his vision, and a test of his character. But in that moment, Larry made a choice that would define not just his future, but the future of Google itself. He chose humility. He chose to learn. He chose to grow. Larry realized that if he wanted Google to survive, to thrive, to become the force he always dreamed it could be, he needed help. He needed to trust others. He needed to let go of control, to open his mind to new ideas, new strategies, new ways of leading. He needed to become a student again, this time a student of leadership. Eric Schmidt brought experience, wisdom, and a steady hand. He brought a sense of order to the chaos, a sense of discipline to the wild energy that fueled Google's early days. He respected Larry and Sergey's vision, but he also challenged them to think bigger, to move faster, to build not just a product, but a company. For Larry, it was a revelation. He watched, he listened, he learned. He saw how Eric navigated the storms of Silicon Valley, how he built relationships, how he inspired loyalty and trust. He saw how a great leader could turn vision into reality, how a great team could achieve the impossible. Larry began to change. He became more open, more collaborative, more willing to listen. He learned to delegate, to trust his team, to focus on what he did best: dreaming, inventing, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. He learned that leadership is not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about bringing out the best in everyone around you. With Eric at the helm, Google began to soar. The company grew at a staggering pace, hiring the best and brightest minds from around the world. They built a culture of innovation, a place where ideas could flourish, where failure was seen as a stepping stone to greatness. They launched new products, new features, new ways of organizing and accessing information. But through it all, Larry Page never lost sight of his original vision. He never stopped dreaming. He never stopped pushing. He never stopped believing that Google could change the world. He poured his energy into the technology, into the algorithms, into the relentless pursuit of better, faster, smarter ways to search. He challenged his team to think bigger, to move faster, to never settle for good enough. He inspired a generation of engineers, designers, and dreamers to reach for the impossible. And slowly the world began to notice. Google's search engine became the gold standard, the tool that millions and then billions of people turned to every day. The company's growth was explosive, its impact undeniable. Larry Page had faced his darkest hour and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. But the journey was far from over. Because just as Google was taking flight, Larry Page would make a decision that would send shockwaves through the entire tech industry. The early 2000s were a time of breathtaking change. The internet was transforming every aspect of life: how we worked, how we learned, how we connected with each other. And at the center of it all was Google. Larry Page watched as his dream became reality. He saw the company grow from a scrappy startup in a garage to a global powerhouse with thousands of employees and offices around the world. He saw Google's search engine become the gateway to the internet. the tool that people used to find answers, solve problems, and explore the world. But Larry was never satisfied. He was always looking ahead, always searching for the next big idea. He believed that Google could be more than just a search engine. He believed that Google could change the world. He pushed his team to innovate, to experiment, to take risks. He encouraged them to think beyond search, to imagine new ways of organizing and accessing information. He challenged them to build products that would make life better for billions of people. And they did. Gmail, Google Maps, Google News. Each new product was a leap forward, a testament to the power of vision, creativity, and relentless determination. Larry believed in the power of moonshots, big, bold, audacious ideas that could change the world. He created Google X, a secret lab dedicated to tackling the world's biggest problems. He encouraged his team to dream without limits, to pursue ideas that seemed impossible. Self-driving cars, internet balloons, artificial intelligence. Larry Page believed that the future belonged to those who dared to dream big and who had the courage to turn those dreams into reality. But the rise of Google was not without its challenges. The company faced fierce competition from rivals like Microsoft, Yahoo, and later, Facebook. They faced scrutiny from regulators, criticism from the media, and skepticism from the public. They faced the constant threat of disruption, the relentless pace of technological change. Larry Page met every challenge with the same relentless determination that had carried him through his darkest moments. He refused to be complacent. He refused to rest on his laurels. He refused to let fear dictate his future. He pushed Google to move faster, to innovate harder, to never stop searching for better ways to serve its users. He built a culture of excellence, a place where the best and brightest could do their best work. And the results were extraordinary. Google became one of the most valuable companies in the world, a symbol of innovation, ambition, and possibility. Larry Page became a legend, a visionary who had changed the way we live, work, and think. But for Larry, it was never about the money, the fame, or the power. It was always about the mission. It was always about the dream. He wanted to build a company that would last, a company that would make the world a better place, a company that would inspire others to dream big, to take risks, to never give up. And in doing so, he inspired a generation. But as Google reached new heights, Larry Page would face a new set of challenges, challenges that would test his vision, his leadership, and his very soul. The world was changing faster than ever. Technology was reshaping every industry, every market, every life. And at the heart of this revolution was Google. Larry Page watched as his company became a global empire. Google's products touched every corner of the globe every moment of the day. Search, email, maps, mobile phones, cloud computing, artificial intelligence. Google was everywhere, but with success came new responsibilities. Larry knew that the choices he made would shape not just the future of his company, but the future of the world. He faced tough questions about privacy, security, and the power of technology. He faced criticism from governments, activists, and ordinary people who worried about the impact of Google's reach. He faced the challenge of building a company that could grow without losing its soul. Larry Page responded with vision, courage, and humility. He restructured Google, creating Alphabet, a new parent company that would allow Google to focus on its core mission while giving other ambitious projects room to grow. He stepped back from day-to-day management, trusting others to lead while he focused on the future. He invested in moonshots, projects that aimed to solve the world's biggest problems. He supported research into renewable energy, life extension, and global connectivity. He believed that technology could be a force for good, a tool for solving humanity's greatest challenges. But he also knew that power comes with responsibility. He worked to build a culture of ethics, transparency, and accountability. He encouraged his team to ask tough questions, to challenge assumptions, to always put users first. Larry Page's leadership was defined by a relentless pursuit of excellence, a willingness to take risks, and a deep commitment to making the world a better place. He built an empire, not for the sake of power, but for the sake of possibility. And in doing so, he changed the world. But even as Larry Page built his empire, he never forgot the lessons of his journey, the failures, the setbacks, the moments of doubt that had shaped him into the leader he had become. Larry Page's journey was never just about building a company. It was about building a legacy of curiosity, courage, and relentless innovation. He believed that the world's biggest problems could be solved by those bold enough to try. He believed that technology was not an end, but a beginning, a tool for unlocking human potential, for connecting people, for making life better. Larry's mindset was shaped by a simple, powerful idea. Never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for better answers. Never stop believing that the impossible is possible. He lived by a set of principles that guided every decision, every risk, every leap of faith. First, he believed in the power of moonshots. He believed that the greatest breakthroughs come from aiming higher than anyone else dares. He encouraged his team to dream big, to take risks, to embrace failure as a necessary step on the path to greatness. Second, he believed in the power of teams. He knew that no one changes the world alone. He built a culture where collaboration, trust, and respect were more important than titles or egos. He empowered others to lead, to innovate, to challenge the status quo. Third, he believed in the power of focus. He knew that the world is full of distractions, of noise, of endless possibilities. He taught his team to focus on what matters most, to say no to good ideas so they could say yes to great ones. Fourth, he believed in the power of persistence. He knew that every journey is filled with setbacks, failures, and moments of doubt. He taught his team to keep going, to keep pushing, to never give up. And finally, he believed in the power of purpose. He knew that true success is not measured by money, fame, or power. It is measured by the impact you have on the world, by the lives you touch, by the problems you solve. Larry Page's legacy is not just Google. It is every entrepreneur who dares to dream. It is every engineer who refuses to settle for good enough. It is every leader who puts mission above ego, who builds for the future, who believes in the power of possibility. He taught us that the future is not something to wait for. It is something to build. He taught us that greatness is not a gift. It is a choice to keep going, to keep believing, to keep searching for a better way. He taught us that the world's information is not just data. It is hope. It is opportunity. It is the key to unlocking a brighter future for everyone. Larry Page's life is a testament to the power of vision, the power of resilience, the power of never giving up. He showed us that one person with one idea can change the world. But as Larry Page steps back from the spotlight, the question remains, what will you do with the lessons he's left behind? This is the story of Larry Page, a story of dreams born in the quiet corners of a Michigan home, a story of struggle, of failure, of relentless hope, a story of a boy who dared to ask, what if? And never stopped searching for the answer. He built more than a company. He built a revolution. He built a legacy that will echo through generations. He showed us that the future belongs to the curious, the bold, the relentless. He showed us that greatness is forged in the fires of failure, in the crucible of doubt, in the courage to keep going when the world says stop. He showed us that the world's information is not just a collection of facts. It is a beacon of possibility, a bridge to a better tomorrow. Larry Page's journey is not over. It lives on in every search, every question, every dream that dares to reach beyond the horizon. So ask yourself, what will you build? What will you risk? What will you dream? Because the world is waiting, the future is calling. And the revolution is just beginning. Dare to dream, dare to build, dare to change the world. Because if Larry Page taught us anything, it's this: the only limits that matter are the ones you place on yourself. And the only future worth living is the one you create. So go, search, build, dream. The world is waiting for your revolution.